He was the face of American mornings for 20 years. The man millions woke up to every single day. Then in 2017, everything changed in 72 hours. Matt Lauer went from being one of the most trusted voices on television to a pariah. His empire crumbled. His reputation shattered. But what happened after the cameras stopped rolling? Where did he actually go? And did he ever really face real consequences for what he did? On November 29th, 2017, NBC News dropped a bombshell. Matt Lauer, the co-host of the Today Show, had been fired. Not suspended. Not investigated. Fired. The network said it was for inappropriate sexual behavior in the workplace. That was it. No details. No explanation. Just gone. The internet exploded. People couldn't believe it. Matt Lauer had been on television since 1982. He interviewed presidents, celebrities, and world leaders. He won Emmy Awards. He made millions of dollars. He was so trusted that people literally invited him into their homes every morning before breakfast. And now he was being erased. Within hours, the story got worse. NBC revealed they had known about a complaint back in 2017, but only acted on it now. Then another news outlet reported that there had been more complaints over the years, some dating back to the 1990s. Suddenly, people started asking, how did this go on for so long? How did nobody stop it? The speed was shocking. By the end of that week, his office at 30 Rockefeller Plaza was cleared out. His name was removed from the building. It was like he had never existed. One of the most recognizable faces in American television was simply erased. But here's what nobody really understood at that moment. This was just the beginning of the story. Being fired from your job is one thing. But what happens when your entire identity, your entire life, your entire fortune is built on being that one job? Where do you go? Who are you without it? And more importantly, who decides if you ever get to come back? That's what makes this story so strange. Because what happened to Matt Lauer after November 29th, 2017, is just as revealing as what he did to get fired in the first place. NBC kept the details locked away, but reporters started digging, and slowly, the real story came out. It was worse than anyone had initially thought. In December 2017, the New York Times published an investigation with detailed accounts from multiple women. They described a pattern of behavior that went back decades. One woman said Lauer had exposed himself to her in his office. Another said he had locked his office door during an encounter and made her uncomfortable. A third described a sexual encounter that left her traumatized. According to the Times reporting, there were at least 7 women who came forward with allegations spanning from the 1990s all the way to 2017. What made it even more disturbing was the power dynamic. Lauer wasn't just any co-worker. He was the biggest star at NBC. He had control over who got promoted, who got good assignments, and who got their contracts renewed. For younger employees or people trying to make it in television, saying no to Matt Lauer wasn't simple. There were consequences. One of the most shocking details came from his own behavior at work. According to reporting, Lauer had a button installed under his desk that locked his office door from the inside. Visitors couldn't leave without his permission. Think about that for a second. He actually engineered his office, so people would be trapped inside with him. That's not a mistake. That's not a misunderstanding. That's calculated. The women who came forward weren't seeking attention. They had stayed silent for years, sometimes decades. They had moved on with their lives. But when the hashtag #MeToo movement started gaining momentum in late 2017, they found the courage to speak. They knew that by coming forward, they would face public scrutiny, doubt, and harassment. But they did it anyway. What's critical to understand is this. Matt Lauer wasn't accused of one bad moment or one mistake. He was accused of a sustained pattern of predatory behavior. And according to multiple investigations by journalists and NBC itself, there was evidence that senior leadership at the network knew about his behavior and did nothing for years. Here's where the story gets infuriating for a lot of people. Matt Lauer didn't face trial. He didn't go to jail. He didn't even face serious legal consequences. Instead, he faced something that looked a lot like protection. NBC fired him. But they also gave him a reported $20 million severance package. $20 million for being fired for sexual misconduct. Meanwhile, the women who came forward had to deal with the emotional and professional fallout of speaking up. Some lost jobs, some faced harassment online, some struggled with PTSD, and Matt Lauer got $20 million. He immediately lawyered up with one of the most powerful legal teams money could buy. His attorney sent cease and desist letters to journalists. They threatened lawsuits against anyone who spoke too publicly about his behavior. They worked to suppress information. This is a tactic used by powerful people who want to control the narrative. You don't have to win in court if you can make people too afraid to talk. In the months after his firing, Lauer barely said a word publicly. He issued a brief statement saying some of his behavior had been inappropriate, but stopped short of any real admission or apology. He didn't name the women he hurt. He didn't acknowledge the pattern. He essentially admitted nothing while his lawyers fought to keep everything quiet. Meanwhile, NBC moved on. They promoted other anchors. They filled his seat. The machine kept running. The network that had known about his behavior for years, the network that had protected him, the network that had allowed him to continue his pattern, that same network faced almost no real consequences either. No executives were fired. No one was prosecuted. Life went on. But for Matt Lauer, one thing was clear. His public life was over. His career in television would never recover. The question everyone wanted answered was simple. Where did he actually go? How does someone disappear from the public eye after being that famous? The answer reveals something uncomfortable about power, wealth, and accountability in America. After the firing, Matt Lauer essentially vanished. He didn't do interviews. He didn't make public appearances. He didn't try to rehabilitate his image on social media. For someone who had been on television every single day for decades, the silence was deafening. But he didn't disappear entirely. He just disappeared from places where regular people could see him. In early 2018, paparazzi photos started circulating of Lauer in the Hamptons, the ultra-wealthy enclave on Long Island, where celebrities and billionaires own massive estates. He was photographed jogging, walking his dogs, living what looked like a normal life, except it wasn't normal. It was a life of someone who had enough money to completely insulate himself from the real world. Lauer owned multiple properties. He had a sprawling estate in the Hamptons worth tens of millions of dollars. He had money in the bank from decades of high television salaries, bonuses, and now his severance package. He didn't need to work. He didn't need to face anyone. He could literally just disappear into a world of wealth where consequences don't really exist for people like him. What's remarkable is how easy it was for him to do this. He had the resources to hire security, to avoid public spaces, to stay behind gates and walls. He could travel internationally without worrying about money. He could hire people to handle his affairs, his finances, his legal battles. In essence, he had built a bubble around himself that most people could never afford. But money doesn't erase everything. According to various reports over the years, Lauer's personal relationships suffered dramatically. His marriage to Annette Roque had reportedly been strained even before the scandal. After his firing, the relationship deteriorated further. By 2019, they separated. In 2022, they officially divorced. His children had to grow up watching their father become a symbol of sexual misconduct. That's a burden that money can't really fix. Friends from his old life disappeared. The television world, which had been his entire identity, rejected him completely. He became radioactive. Nobody in media wanted to associate with him. He was officially a pariah, wealthy, isolated, and completely cut off from the life he had known. But isolation isn't the same as accountability. And that's what kept eating at the people who had been hurt by him. While Matt Lauer was hiding away in his Hamptons mansion, the women who came forward were dealing with something very different. They were living in the public eye, facing scrutiny, doubt, and often harassment. One of the first women to speak publicly was Brooke Neville's, a former NBC employee who had worked as a producer and occasional on-air contributor. In 2019, she published a detailed account in Variety describing an alleged sexual assault by Lauer during the 2014 Winter Olympics in Sochi, Russia. According to her account, Lauer had invited her to his hotel room, and the encounter turned sexual without her consent. She described feeling trapped and violated. For years, she had stayed silent. But when the hashtag #MeToo movement gave her courage, she spoke. What happened next was predictable and infuriating. Lauer's legal team attacked her credibility. They suggested she had consented. They tried to discredit her publicly. They used the full power of expensive lawyers to make her life harder for telling the truth, and it worked to some degree. Her story, while widely reported, also became contested and complicated in the public mind. But Neville's wasn't alone. Other women came forward too. Some remained anonymous because they feared retaliation. Others spoke on the record despite knowing they would face backlash. They described a pattern of behavior that had made them feel unsafe at work. They talked about the power imbalance. They explained how difficult it had been to speak up when Lauer controlled so much of their professional lives. The cruel irony is this. These women had to do the emotional work of processing trauma while also defending themselves against people who questioned whether the trauma was even real. They had to relive painful moments in public. They had to read articles doubting their accounts. Meanwhile, Matt Lauer was jogging on the beach in the Hamptons. Some of the women eventually found healing and moved forward with their lives. Others struggled with ongoing mental health issues related to what had happened. A few tried to pursue legal action, but statutes of limitations made it difficult. The legal system, it turned out, wasn't designed to protect people in these situations. It was designed to protect people with money and power. What became clear was that Matt Lauer's real punishment wasn't legal. It was social. He had been expelled from his world. But the women had to carry the weight of what happened to them for the rest of their lives. By 2020 and 2021, years had passed since Matt Lauer's fall from grace, and something interesting started to happen. He began to quietly re-enter public life. Not on television. That door was permanently closed. But in other ways. In 2021, Lauer was spotted at various high-end events and restaurants in New York City and the Hamptons. He started appearing in paparazzi photos again, no longer hiding completely. He was photographed at charity galas, at upscale restaurants, at social events where wealthy people gathered. The message seemed intentional. I'm still here, I'm still wealthy, and I'm moving on with my life. But here's what's crucial to understand. A comeback for Matt Lauer could never be what his comeback would have been for someone less famous. He couldn't go back to television. No network would touch him. He couldn't launch a podcast or YouTube channel and expect mainstream credibility. The door on that life was sealed shut. What he could do, however, was fade into the background of the wealthy elite. He could become one of those ultra-rich people you never hear about, but who still exist in exclusive circles. He could attend private events, invest money, live a quiet life of privilege while the world slowly forgot about him. And that's essentially what appears to have happened. By the mid-2020s, Matt Lauer had largely disappeared from public consciousness. Younger people might not even know who he is. The scandal that once dominated news cycles had become a historical footnote. Time, as it often does for wealthy people, had softened his fall. He wasn't actively being hunted by media anymore. He wasn't trending on social media. He was just gone. But gone is a relative term. He still exists. He still has money. He still has his freedom. And that's exactly what infuriates people about this story. Because while Matt Lauer gets to quietly disappear into wealth and privilege, the women he hurt don't get that luxury. Their trauma doesn't fade into the background. Their pain doesn't get absorbed by time and money. What makes this story even more complex is a question nobody can answer with certainty. Did he ever actually change? Did he ever truly understand what he did? Or did he just get better at hiding? The real ending to this story isn't about Matt Lauer's personal redemption or lack thereof. It's about what his case revealed about power, accountability, and how America actually works. For years, people believed the system would punish Matt Lauer, that criminal charges would come, that he would face real consequences. But he didn't. He faced financial loss and social exile, which sounds serious until you remember he still has tens of millions of dollars and access to exclusive communities where he's still accepted. For ordinary people, losing your job and reputation would be catastrophic. For Matt Lauer, it was an inconvenience. Meanwhile, NBC itself faced minimal consequences. The network that had known about his behavior for years, that had protected him, that had allowed him to continue hurting people, that same network paid settlements to the women who came forward and moved on. A few executives faced criticism, but nobody was prosecuted. Nobody went to jail. The institution survived intact. This pattern repeated throughout the #MeToo era. Powerful men faced public shaming. Sometimes they lost their jobs. Some faced lawsuits. But very few faced actual criminal prosecution. Very few went to prison. The system, it turned out, wasn't built to hold powerful men accountable in any meaningful way. It was built to absorb scandals and move forward. What Matt Lauer's story really teaches us is uncomfortable. It shows that in America, if you have enough money and enough power, you can survive almost anything. You can disappear. You can wait it out. You can let time pass. And eventually, the world will move on. The women you hurt will carry their trauma forever. But you'll be sipping wine at charity galas in the Hamptons while people forget your name. But here's what's also true. Matt Lauer will never be Matt Lauer again. The man he was, trusted, celebrated, powerful in the traditional sense. That person is dead. He's alive, he's wealthy, he's free. But he's also erasing the world he once dominated. He can't walk into a room without some people knowing what he did. He can't rebuild his career. He can't reclaim his legacy. In a way, his punishment is that he gets to live quietly for the rest of his life, always knowing that his name is synonymous with predatory behavior. The real question we should ask ourselves is this: is that enough? Is social exile and financial loss real accountability? Or is it just the price wealthy people pay to keep their freedom? What would actual justice have looked like? Would it have required prison time? Would it have required him admitting everything and facing real legal consequences? Or would that still not be enough for the women whose lives were forever changed? These questions don't have easy answers, but they matter because every time we watch a powerful person fall and then quietly fade away, we're making a choice about what kind of accountability we're willing to accept as a society. What do you think Matt Lauer deserved as real consequence? And do you believe the #MeToo movement actually changed how institutions protect their employees, or did it just teach powerful people to hide better? Let me know in the comments below.